The Game Awards is an annual show every year around December run by Jeff Keighley, celebrating 1 year of video gaming from that year. Granted, it's not really the full year because all of December and some of November gets skipped over because voting begins mid November. So, anyway, apologies in advance for the Genshin gameplay. I didn't want to have just a blank screen while I'm talking. Slight spoilers for base Persona 5 as well, so if you haven't experienced that game, or yeah, if you have not experienced at least the base story of Persona 5, go and do so, alright? Alright. With the annual Game Awards coming up soon, I wanted to make a video defining exactly what a Game of the Year means. I feel like most people tend to not fully understand and purely go off of how much enjoyment she got from the game, not taking into consideration everything else. As an example, I'll go over why Breath of the Wild should not have won Game of the Year in 2017, but instead should have gone to Persona 5, of the 5 other games that were nominated, which were PUBG, Super Mario Odyssey, and I believe Celeste? Oh, wait, no, it's Horizon Zero Dawn. Never mind. Alright, so first, let's define what makes a Game of the Year material. There's a lot to go over and explain, so bear with me here, and apologies if I go too fast. I'm naturally a fast talker. For a lot of people, the most important part of the game will obviously be the gameplay. If the gameplay, whether it's the combat, exploration, solving puzzles, isn't up to snuff, a lot of people will be disappointed and drop the game. In Breath of the Wild's case, after leaving the plateau, the starting area where you get your 4 main abilities, the game kind of stays the same from start to finish. The only time it's ever unique with its puzzles is the 4 Divine Beasts. There's 120 shrines as well, but only a handful of those are unique, and of those unique, only a few were actually clever puzzles and not just use your eyes and memory. Think the 2 Twin Peaks puzzles where you had to put the shrine orbs in a particular area. So, for instance, in the tallest peak, you have to use that shrine balls in the different one, and then the lowest peak, you have to put those shrine balls in the highest one. Not only that, but there's also the major test, modest test, and minor test of strength, as well shrines, which weren't puzzles, they were just, as they were, tests of strength. The upgrading aspect for the armor was grindy and only worth to do to get the good outfits to +2 to get the full armor bonus. I am, of course, referring to stuff like the swimming outfit, what else? The lava breaker armor, not Gerudo. Well, technically Gerudo outfit. Not the one that everyone is, has feelings for, but the Vi armor that you get in the secret shop. As a few examples. Going beyond is just a waste of materials. You don't get anything for +4 other than more defense, but why would you do that for every set when you should only be doing that for a combat armor set, like the Knight Soldier armor? A lot of the side quests were also not worth doing since the rewards weren't good for what you had to do for them. There's only a few good quests, like the Hudson one though. Yes, there are shrine quests, but you can pretty much just bypass the shrine quest entirely and just stumble upon the shrine yourself. That can happen. Anyway, with Persona 5 on the other hand, the game evolves as you unlock more abilities from your confidants, get better personas, more party members, and making use of bonus effects for weapons. That is, if you pick them. The puzzles are also clever. Using personas is a bit tedious, but is very rewarding in the end, and very costly too. In base Persona 5, I should say. And doing the Mementos quests are well worth your time and attention, too. Hanging out with the 14 plus characters and getting to learn about them keeps the player invested. I will go on record and say that Persona 5 has the best social links of the 3 big Persona games. Except for one character, but I'll get to her later. Kind of. Next is the other, and debatably more important aspect to a video game, story. With a good cast of characters, story, lore, world building, and so on, an engaging story will keep players tied to the controller until the very end. Breath of the Wild is a simple story, which is fine, but it's super bland and everything feels meaningless, especially if you choose to go to Hyrule Castle after leaving the plateau, which many speedrunners like to do. The story between the past Link, who is a devoted silent knight, and Princess Zelda was not all that interesting, let's be honest. Nintendo has done a Link and Zelda story before, and it was incredible. I'm talking about the Skyward Sword Zelda and Link. The two went to the same academy, cared for each other, and that Link went on his journey to find Zelda, who went missing beneath the clouds. He had a purpose and a reason for what he did. Because of how Breath of the Wild is set up, you could choose not to have Link care about his past, and just have him be a different person entirely. His journey could be made into one with no purpose other than to be an adventure. You could quite literally say, memories, don't need them, I am who I am now. Bye! Pretty much. Persona 5 story is about punishing an adult who abused the authority she has. Now that I think about it, the only female palace owner was Futaba in Persona 5. I say that because we did get a female antagonist in Persona 5 Strikers, and changing the hearts of those that are wicked. However, everything is connected, and every enemy has a purpose, regardless of how coincidental it may seem. The characters are well written, except for Haru, and the story has little to no issues, emphasis on the little to no issues. And yes, there are 0 issues with the Morgana and Ryuji mini arc during Okumura's palace. The two bicker throughout the entire game ever since Morgana was introduced, and Ryuji rubbed salt in the wound, which rightfully pissed off Morgana. And the environment/area of Persona 5 takes place in is incredible. I will go into more detail about the Ryuji Morgana arc at a later date. Just know, there's no issues with it, and it makes total sense. Anyway, next on line would be the art style, or graphics, usually. Games these days are moving more and more towards realistic rather than be stylized or have a unique art style to them. However, not all games, though. Some are taking the more anime/cartoon-like style, see Hi-Fi Rush, for instance, which is honestly better than games that share a similar style. I have nothing bad to say about Breath of the Wild's art style. It's perfectly fine and looks incredible. There are some cut corners, but if you don't pay attention to them, it's not that bothersome. Also, keep in mind, Breath of the Wild was released in 2017. It still looks good to this day. Persona 5 is the same, but its style is slightly better than Breath of the Wild's. I believe Persona 5 got more refined with both Royal and Strikers, though. Let's talk music. And audio, since they're kinda sorta similar? Depends on who you ask. Good song themes can elevate a scenario, whether it be a happy-go-lucky scene or a scene where it's a serious mood. Audio can make the game feel more alive and like you're actually there, from the weather to animals to NPCs just talking. Breath of the Wild doesn't really have any good music. Sure, there's some recognizable themes, like when the big guardians attack, as in the big dudes with the laser eyes and the tentacle legs, or when you fight the blights, but aside from that, there's not a single song that stands out. Audio-wise, it's good, given that its entire thing is running around nature. The nature sounds are good. You feel like you're actually out there in nature. They did a good job on that. Persona 5, on the other hand, has an entire collection of good songs. Blooming Villain, Life Will Change, Rivers in the Desert, Beneath the Mask, etc. The audio makes you feel like you're in Japan itself, and in said area of Japan as well, because there are multiple locations in Persona 5 as well. So like Shinjuku, Roppongi, Ginza, I believe, Shibuya, I believe. The area where LeBlanc is. It's been forever, forgive me. Lastly, but third most important, voice acting. Voice acting goes a long way to convey the emotions the characters are going through. It can make or break a game depending on the direction the creators go with the characters. I will be talking about the English voice acting, as it's the only one I'm personally familiar with. Breath of the Wild sparingly used the voice acting, only using it for fully animated cutscenes. Everyone was good, however, except for Zelda. I suppose it makes up for it, though, being a blind story, since there's very rarely any high-impact cutscenes with intense emotion. Emphasis on the rarely. There is one example I can think of, but I don't think she emoted very well in that cutscene. Persona 5, on the other hand, has one of the best English dubs to date, and it's no surprise because Atlus is generally good with their English dubs. I said generally good. The Aeon cast was perfect, and everyone fit the character incredibly well, even Xander Mobus, who mostly grunted, but unlike other Persona Pro tags, he actually got to vocally speak in scenes, which was a nice change of pace. Gameplay, story, art style, or graphics, music, audio, and voice acting. These are the major key ingredients to making a good game. Now, you could say what matters the most to you is how much fun you had, which is fine, but objectively, you're wrong. Namely because you can have fun with a bad game, but that doesn't mean it's a good game. It just means you had fun with it. A Game of the Year is a culmination of how to make a near-perfect game with little to no flaws. It has the best everything from that year in gaming, and all future games should take notes on what was done right and what was done wrong, so those games don't make the same mistakes. Using Breath of the Wild one last time, it wasn't the best that year had to offer. It had so many flaws to count, and sadly, almost none of them got fixed in Tears of the Kingdom, and inspired a handful of other games to go in a similar direction. Even though it wasn't the first open-world game, people seem to forget that. Yes, Breath of the Wild was popular, but just because it being an open world game doesn't mean other games copied it. There are plenty of other open world games that did it first. And better, I would say. Of the 5 games that were nominated for 2017, Persona 5 should have won. Because of those 5 nominated, it had everything and did right. Disregarding the nominations, does it still deserve the title of Game of the Year? And I'm saying that because if we include every single game that was released in 2017 that wasn't a re-release or a remake, does it still deserve Game of the Year? It absolutely does. However, Persona 5 Royal expands upon Base 5 and is obviously a much better game than Base. It not being nominated in 2020, talking about Royal, but The Last of Us Part 2, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Doom and Turtle instead were baffling. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, and Hades definitely deserve to be nominated, however, because those were actually good games. So with that in mind, of the 6 games that were nominated this year for 2023, which should win? Honestly, I still think it should go to Baldur's Gate 3. Mostly because its only competition is Spider-Man 2, but that game was a recent release and feels unfair to have it up there. That and some parts of the story kind of fell flat, especially the ending. Plus, the other 4 games shouldn't be there in my opinion. Granted, I haven't experienced Alan Wake 2 yet, or the first one, but RE4 Remake, Mario Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom are not Game of the Year material. Final Fantasy XVI, Hi-Fi Rush, Massive Detective Archives Raincode, and Yakuza Gaiden would have made for better contenders, considering they're actually good. Though in Gaiden's case, it came out too late before the Game Awards started to tout nominees. I really hope they change that for next year and beyond and wait for every game to be released in that year, then do the show at the end of the year / beginning of the next instead. Makes more sense, honestly. One could also argue how replayable a game is as well, whether it's multiple endings, different choices for quests, or playing a different way entirely. I believe a game that does this well is The Witcher 3, though mostly in the quest side of replayability. It does have multiple endings as well, but again, mostly the quests. Hope this helped you understand what makes a game Game of the Year material, and also why it kind of matters to an extent. Here's hoping for good / interesting reveals this coming Thursday. I'll see you then.
Look at you! In consideration.
Get a little chilly.
Rain outlines your fate. Absorption test. Animal hypostasis.
Here's backup.
Let me weave you a
I got you covered.
Witness the power. Stand clear. Enhanced animal monster.
Don't get too close.